Hey, you're listening to the Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast, where you'll learn why you're feeling so burnt out, some insights and hacks to get you along this entrepreneurial journey. I'm Kylie Yota, former oil and gas manager turned health coach, life coach, and business mentor for female entrepreneurs just like you, and help them heal and recover from burnout. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast, where we bring you insights and strategies to overcome burnout and build a sustainable business. Today, we are thrilled to have Aimee, the money confidence coach, as our guest. Aimee has over 10 years of experience in the personal finance industry, and she's here to share her expertise on how to ditch financial stress, struggle, and frustration. Raise your hand if you feel any of those when you're looking at your finances. She's going to help us today to ditch all of that so you can focus on building a thriving business without sacrificing your well-being. We're not here to burn out looking at our finances and our numbers. So just get ready to get inspired and empowered as we dive into this conversation with Aimee. And I'm going to raise my hand. I am a client of Aimee's. She and I met in business space, and we're in a cohort together, and we found each other. I loved what she did. She did a training on inflation, and everything was happening. I mean, I knew her on a personal level, but I was like, gosh, she really knows her stuff. You know people on a personal level, but you don't actually dive into their expertise because you meet them in a program. It's like, oh gosh, I need to have her on the podcast. So thank you for being here today, Aimee, and welcome. Welcome.
Absolutely, Kylie. I am so glad to be here, and I'm really thrilled. I don't know if I've told you this or not. That inflation training was so last minute. It was like, this is happening, and I need to talk about this, and I need to throw this together, and it kind of felt chaotic. So I'm glad that it was as valuable as it was. It still is around. I evergreened it, but yeah.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking all about finances and how to really feel grounded when you're looking at your finances. And the reason why I joined Aimee's program is because I felt really discombobulated. The economy took a downturn, and it's been taking a downturn since 2020. And so I've been in this space where I felt systems that used to work for me weren't working for me. And in that time span, I took on a lot of debt, and I felt the weight of the debt just bearing on me. And because Aimee and I were friends, it was easy for me to kind of confide in her, and because we already had built that level of rapport. But I'll tell you, if you follow her on Instagram or whatever, you'll see how real she is, and you can get to know her and know that she has you. That's what I love the most about Aimee's coaching, is she has you. And we talk about all different kind of things. We actually had our coaching session for this recording, and we talked about all different kinds of things. She talks about the offensive strategies and the defensive strategies. I know a lot of people are those. So can you just explain to us what those offensive and defensive strategies are a little bit to bring the people up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I created the Unstoppable Finances framework because so many times we find that we're working really hard in one area of our finances, but we're not getting ahead. And it's just like a ball game. That defensive side is what most of us think about when it comes to our money. That's where your budget, and really we call it a money management system, because you need more than just a budget, but taking care of the money you already have, protecting what you have. Okay. That's your defense. Offense is making money. So that can be through your business. That can be through a side hustle. It can be through a traditional 9-to-5. It can be through investments, all quick things that you do on the weekend, all those things. We actually had a fun conversation the other day about offensive doesn't necessarily have to be just physical currency, money that we think of it. It can actually show up in other ways. And we can talk about that in a little bit if we want to. Then we have the battlefield, which is money mindset, economics, rules of the game. And then we took economics in high school, but I'll be honest, even myself, it just went straight over my head. It doesn't make any sense at all, but we talk about it in a way that makes sense, break it down, make it simple, and the things that we need to know, because that is, if you don't know the battlefield, where you're at, you can't win. It's almost the rules of the game. And then the fourth part is coaching, because even the professional athletes have somebody to help them review the footage with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that Aimee reviews all of my footage with me. Today we went over QuickBooks. It's tax time now, and it's just scary sometimes looking at your numbers. And when you don't have the systems in place to look at them and consistently and make sure that it's like cleaning your house, doing your dishes and doing your laundry. The transactions come in and out, just clothes go in the dirty hamper. And it's a thing that you constantly have to look at, not just once a year when you're trying to reconcile your accounts, but like that Aimee has helped me to develop that habit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are key.
Yeah. And well, what can you say for those people who just heard what I said and were like, I mean, what's wrong with just looking at your numbers once a year when you're preparing for tax time? Why do I need to have a financial system? I don't know. Explain it to the people. For us right people who are like, it's there. I have a shoebox full of receipts and like, why do I need to have a system?
Funny story. My stepdad literally had a shoebox full of receipts for a long time when he and my mom first got married, or even before that. We were helping them like do almost like work or whatever. And he brought like a shoebox full of receipts because his accountant wouldn't take it. So we had to go through the shoebox for him. But when we're only looking at our numbers once a year, and I would almost make the argument, if you're just gathering your numbers for tax season and turning over to your accountant, you don't even really have to necessarily look at the numbers. So you might still be avoiding that there because we might not want to face it. But if you're only doing that once a year, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you're doing that. You can't make decisions based off of that. It's how can we run a business effectively if we don't know what's working? If we don't know where things are at, you could have a massive hole in your ship and you wouldn't even know it. You could be taking a vacation because you should have extra money and we wouldn't know it because we're not looking at it. And it doesn't have to be the thing that I love about systems, because I truly believe that simple systems are the best way to create long-term sustainable abundance, is because when you set up an effective system, it runs on autopilot. You just have to check in with it. I love numbers, but I don't know that I want to sit and look at an Excel spreadsheet all day long. That's still not fulfilling for me. I'd rather go play with my kids. I mean, I've got 4 kids and they're already growing up as fast as they already are. That made total sense. But my youngest is already 6 months old. And like, I want to be able to treasure that time. And I married my husband because I want to spend time with him. These things are in place for a reason. And as much as we love what we do, we don't want to get burnt out. We don't want to have to spend all this time doing it. And that's why we put the system in place, is so that it's less pressure on yourself.
Yeah. And so with the business systems and the operating systems and apps and all of that, the things that I love with the automations, what I tell my folks is it's like Spanx. It just holds you up, makes you look put together and gives you that confidence so that while you're doing everything right, we're using Spanx as the analogy, the fat is still there, but it's just being held up by the structure, the supportive structure of the system.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And so for those of you who are thinking, well, I get it, but said you don't really have to look at it. Like the system is in play, and I can raise my hand and say, yes, she's helped me set up systems where I just import all of my transactions into QuickBooks. And there's not a lot of hands-on that I have to do. There's just like an overseeing that I have to do every month now. And look at all the transactions. Are they in the right categories? And she's even helped me with categories. So, as entrepreneurs, sometimes that's the biggest thing is like, what category does it belong to?
And what's deductible? And like, can I take this or can I not? And like, yeah, there's so many different things, and just set it up and look at it, set overview. It's almost like CEO report that crosses your desk once a month, ideally, but less frequently.
We can be the CFO of our business. This is also good. I always talk about setting up systems before you're ready to outsource. You have to have these systems in place before you hand it over to a bookkeeper. Because I had a client who was a bookkeeper, and she was really trying to scale her business. But what was happening was these clients would come in with books that were had shoe boxes of things, and a lot of cleanup had to be done before she could even start doing the bookkeeping process.
Yeah.
And it was burning her out, essentially, that when she went in there, she was like, there was a lot of cleanup work that had to be done before that. And that cleanup work gets really expensive if you're outsourcing that. So learning how to look at your finances and really interpret the data. I mean, we're looking at all different kinds of data, right? Looking at email conversion rates, landing page conversions rate, your sales, and you're looking at those numbers anyway. So this is just another set of numbers that we have to look at as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've been listening to this podcast, there are 4 different archetypes, and each archetype kind of has a different way of managing finances. And like I always say, the systems that you set up for your business, and today we're talking about money systems that you set up for your business have to align with your personality type, your archetype. Because if it doesn't, then that's why you feel that stress. My archetype, I am primarily a powerhouse, but I'm also part popular archetype. So for me, I didn't, that's why I set up all of the automations in my business. I set up Zapier, I have a focus block, I set up Zaps, one and done, so that I don't have to keep manually doing things all the time. So that's how my popular archetype gets to thrive. And when I first started working with Aimee, that's what we did. We addressed the need for the popular archetype in me to need that freedom. I need that expansiveness. And looking at numbers makes me cross-eyed. And I think that was what helped me out the most working with Aimee is like, so there are traditional money people that will tell you that most of them, I'll be honest, they are perfectionists, and Aimee is a perfectionist archetype, but very left-brained, very boxy thinking, masculine structured thinking. And that's not wrong. I mean, we need people to help us with these kinds of things. But when those kinds of people are teaching us as the popular archetype or the right brain people in the world, hard for us as right brainers, the creatives, to really get into that too much structure. It overjams your brain at times. I know for me it does. So I don't know. Aimee, can you talk more about like your clients or some of the people that you worked with that were super creative, and how, besides me, because I'm I'm the poster girl for this scenario, but how really, like in a nutshell, how would you get these popular archetypes on board to really looking at it and not being afraid of that?
I think that and you are like poster client. Let's just replicate you. So anybody that's listening that's just Kylie, I would love to work with you because she's been great. But there is, and actually full transparency, I was working on this for my podcast because one of the podcast coach that I listen to is talking about, like, okay, what's the thing that's going to set you apart? What's the thing that makes you different? And he harps on the financial podcast. And I didn't realize how right he was until I did some market research and realized, like, goodness, the description of all of them sounds the same. So I've done a lot of thinking on what sets me apart. And I really think when we address the emotion first, that's the key. So I talk a lot about impulse spending and how not all impulse spending is bad. And as the popular archetype, you want to go have fun. And I'm not telling you that you have to stop all the fun money. And I think that in and of itself is a really big indicator, but you have to find those things that do light you up. And we have to be able to focus on that. When we talk about the emotion behind it is almost just as important as what you're actually doing with your money. And I would almost argue more important. And this is why I don't like spend challenges and some of those things, because when you go so hardcore, we're not dealing with the core issue at here and the way that we feel and think about things, and it doesn't create long-term results. But when you set yourself up to have those rewards and to be able to have some fun with your money, you're going to create the positive emotion behind it. And that has to be your focus. Yes, you can absolutely have somebody help you set that up. And that's really what I designed the academy to do. And I'll tell people, give away a lot of information because, you know, finances, it's not really rocket science. It's kind of simple to do. But the thing is, the tactical stuff is what's simple to do. Like emotions and all of that is way more important than tell you all day long. We all know we need to technically have this, but doing it, that's another thing. So if you are afraid of the doing it, like what is the reason behind it? There's stories, there's mindset there. We can work on that. That's much more in depth. But at the core, you have to realize, like, no matter what, it's your money. You get to do with it whatever the heck you want. Like, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no judgment here. And if you start there and you understand this is just you making a different choice, you can move as far as you want to move.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest benefit that I've gotten since working with you is looking at money from that perspective. So weird. We grow up with this idea that money controls everything that we do. I mean, especially in business, right? When you're looking at your balance sheets and these are expenses, debits, credits, and what's the profit? What can I use to reinvest? And like just looking at numbers from that perspective, it's very logical piece. But when you want to invest in a program and say like, you don't have the money for it, well, that's when you dig deeper and say, well, what did I actually spend my money on? Instead of saving up for something that I know that I really wanted to get, but yet I kind of $10 Amazon purchases, they add up. Aimee and I were talking once, and the term that we came up with was Amazon and things like that are like dopamine purchase. When you buy like $10 thing, $15 thing, go to Starbucks, you get your latte, whatever you get, you could not buy those things, but we buy those things like impulse spending items because it gives us that dopamine hit. And it's funny, after we talked about that, when we were going through, my husband actually also adopted the term because he's like, is that a dopamine purchase? It's so hilarious. It's like, oh my gosh, not being controlled by those dopamine purchases. And if we're looking at how money and budget, same thing like with the physical diet in the health and wellness industry. If you're just counting calories, it sucks.
Yep.
When do you get to enjoy a chocolate cup strawberry every once and again? Or like if it's your birthday, do you get to have the cake? Do you get to enjoy life? I like the way that Aimee talks about defensive and offensive strategies because you're looking at it from both sides. And to use the game analogy, if we're doing all of our accounting once a year, you're in the fourth quarter. How are you going to strategize the rest of the 3 quarters of the game if you're only looking at your numbers?
You're showing up to the Super Bowl and you haven't practiced all year long.
Yeah. And here you are. You haven't practiced and you haven't strategized. And well, for one, we probably wouldn't even be in the Super Bowl if you weren't prepared, but just say
Little League Super Bowl or something.
Yeah. But you know, just look at it like that. If you're strategizing from Q4, look at all of the time that you wasted in the first 3 quarters of the game. You didn't strategize. You were just playing like little leaguing it, or it's Pop Warner football. But you know, when you're looking at it from that perspective, just kind of loosey-goosey and just playing for fun. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you have to win the game. So in the last 2 minutes, you're not going to go into overtime. I mean, I guess technically if you file an extension on your taxes, that's going into overtime, but still.
But then you're borrowing against next year because we know you're not working on next year when you're still trying to catch up on last year.
So I just really love how he said there's a battlefield, there's the offensive strategies, which the way that like money comes in. And then the defensive strategies are stuff that we work on is like how to save more. How can we cut expenses? Things like that. And my gosh, when I actually looked at all of my expenses, I'm like, oh, why do I have 3 apps that do the same thing? And
Yep,
then I was able to cut some of them.
yeah, that annual subscription that you signed up for last year and you completely forgot about until it bowled your account again. We have a system for that. And that's a defensive strategy because it's a lot easier to remember to cancel it beforehand than to add something else to your plate to go ask for a refund.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Aimee, you and I could talk all day about all the different strategies, but I know that you have a workshop coming up.
Yeah, I am pretty excited about it. Honestly, this has been almost 2 years in the making. I was actually listening to a recording of the group that we're both a part of, and I heard myself talking about needing to create this workshop, and I swear it was 18 months ago. So we're finally doing it, and it's called Cash Flow Unlocked, and we're going to really truly focus on the offensive side of the finances and giving you 5 essential keys to make more money. We're going to talk about the different things that you need to do. So, Cash Flow Unlocked, we're talking about the 5 essential keys to make more money. We are going to help you understand your numbers, gain that financial control and the confidence, because that's why I call myself a money confidence coach, because when you have confidence within your money, that's game changing. And we can talk about personal experience there as well. And this isn't about adding more things to your plate. Like, even if you just don't have the time for one more thing, there's a whole section in here that we talk about simplifying and how to really identify what's actually working so that you can move forward. And this isn't called a workshop just because I'm going to sit there and give you zero help on actually doing this. It's a workshop for a reason. We're going to spend time getting into nitty gritty of it and working on this together live so that you can actually start to move forward. Because I know, again, I said, money isn't necessarily this super rocket science thing, but because of the emotion and the complicated and how fast overwhelm can show up, I want to get us working together in person. So we're going to do all of that together inside the workshop.
Wow. So they'll get a little taste of what it's like to be inside of the academy too.
Yes, that's the goal. Yeah. And I'm still working on VIP because I think VIP we're going to do more time together.
Ooh, yes. I love those kinds of workshops where basic is you get what everybody gets. Mm-hmm. I attended a workshop that had a VIP add-on. It was a game changer. I learned so much more. We got more hands-on time, and she was able to look at things that we were doing and give us direct feedback. It was almost like a one-on-one session. She had us all in a hot seat, and it was so good. If you guys are thinking about joining, the link is going to be in the show notes. But yeah, just consider the VIP option, because having Aimee look at your finances and give you strategies, tips, and insight onto I love working with Aimee. To say that, I love working with Aimee because she helps me get to the nitty gritty of my finances, and it gets to be daunting. That's the one, I'm a systems person, but I'll tell you, my finances are the one place that it's junk drawer of my business. There's stuff, receipts in there, and but having Aimee to help me look at those things has been really good. And when we were inside of the academy, she helped me to really look at why I was so into just stuffing my accounting into this junk drawer, essentially, and why I was afraid to look at it, and why I was making my debt mean something. I had this label across my chest as you're a bad business owner because you're carrying debt, when in essence, there's ways to leverage the debt. There's different schools of thought. There's the Dave Ramsey school of thought, and then there's the leveraged, debt school of thought. And there's so many different ways to manage your money. And so if you feel constricted or stressed and you're feeling burnt out, this is a Burnt Out Entrepreneur podcast. If you're feeling burnt out about how to manage the money that's coming in, or even if there's no money coming in, there's a strategy for that as well. I love that Aimee talks about all those things. So go ahead and register for the workshop, because it's going to be amazing. And I'll probably register as well so I can just be there and just get more of the goodness, because I just get everything that Aimee puts out. Yes, we're friends, but the stuff that she talks about and how she talks about money is really important.
So we're kicking off on April 18th. I might be adding a second date. So if April 18th doesn't work for you, just go check out the page anyways, because we're going to figure it out. And I send out replays too. So that would be awesome. And yes, even if this is actually, I'm going to step on my pedestal here for a minute, not pedestal, soapbox. There we go. Soapbox moment. I just actually recorded a podcast episode for my podcast on this. If you are not making enough money to cover your expenses in your business, there is no guilt, no shame about that. There is so much pressure perception out there about the fact that, oh yeah, I hit these really high income goals really quickly. And if that's you, great. But for majority of us, myself included, that was not the case. And there needs to quit being all the guilt and shame about that. And the system that I teach, we'll talk about it. I call it Prosperity Simplified. The thing that I love about it is it's a seamless transition between you investing into your business and then you paying yourself from your business. So again, we can talk about the mindset behind it. If you don't have that system in place, you might actually be self-sabotaging from hitting your income goals because you won't be able to handle it. That's a whole nother thing. But yes, if you are not hitting your income goals, there's no guilt about that. Just come join us on the workshop. We'll get it all sorted out.
Yeah, gosh. See, that alone is worth the price of admission, folks. That alone. Because there's so many, I mean, it's not just us. I mean, let's talk about Silicon Valley Bank. Talk about debt to credit ratios, overextension, and over leveraging.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere. And because a lot of us are entrepreneurs, we're here behind a computer, and nobody talks about finances. And when you go to your mastermind calls, like nobody talks about I had a 6-figure launch. How much did you spend on ads? How much did it cost? What's the expense attached to that revenue?
Revenue versus profit. That's actually going to be talked about in the workshop too.
And so let's just take the stigma away from not earning as much as your fellow entrepreneur, all the people that you're hanging out with online, or these influencers that you see. Because if you don't know, I have worked behind the scenes with a lot of influencers, and everyone has the same problems, whether it's operational problems, money problems. Everyone has the same problems. We all poop the same. We all eat the same. We all sleep the same. Just because they have an elevated presence online doesn't mean that they're not real people behind the scenes. And until they have these types of systems in place, they're just us. So all of that to say, gosh, this episode has been so cool to have you on here. And just thank you again for being here. And thank you for you guys who are listening. So thank you for listening to this episode of The Burnt Out Entrepreneur. And thank you, Aimee, for being on the show. She's the money confidence coach. She helps you to build that money confidence. Money is just not about numbers. It's not only about numbers. It's about having the confidence and the mindset to be a successful entrepreneur. No matter what your money looks right now, you can always improve on your financial status. That's just it. So again, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring conversations just like this. And till next time, we'll see you.
Thank you, Kylie. Bye.
Bye.